TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. Advice for dealing with ICE leads to a city employee's suspension even as local crackdowns increase. JTA scales back plans to abolish a paratransit service after community backlash. Northside residents opposed to one development are told to move. Murray Hill residents gain traction in a lawsuit against a Westside fragrance factory, and a reporter makes headlines of her own for comments after the Jags loss. We'll talk about all that and more with our panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review. Later, a late-in-life embrace of art turns a local potter into a national success story. We explore the art of Mandarin's own Charlie Moses Brown. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways to connect with us. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. More than 3,000 federal immigration agents are in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, or they'll be there soon. President Trump is using them to crack down on immigrants and stop and detain people. Minnesota residents say the agents' tactics are increasingly violent. Destiny Jackson and her family were driving home from their son's basketball game in Minneapolis when they were caught in a protest. She says ICE agents fired tear gas nearby that set off her van's airbags. Jackson and 6 children were inside. She says the tear gas was so bad, her 6-month-old baby stopped breathing.
Having to get my baby mouth to mouth and people pouring milk all over my other kids. I thought I was dying, honestly.
She says bystanders got them out. The ACLU is suing the Trump administration to stop the deployment of federal forces to Minnesota. The group alleges the Trump administration is ignoring basic human rights to force its tactics against Minnesota residents. Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, met President Trump yesterday. She gave him her Nobel Peace Prize medal. Separately, NPR's Carrie Kahn reports acting Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez has given a major speech.
Rodriguez exhibited flashes of defiance in her short speech to lawmakers, calling the U.S. military attack on Venezuela a, quote, stain on our relations. Rodriguez has the tough task now of not upsetting hardliners in her government while avoiding antagonizing President Trump. She told lawmakers Venezuela can't fear diplomacy, but also added if she has to go to Washington, she will go on her own terms.
Lo haré de pie. Caminando, no arrastrada. Lo haré con la bandera tricolor. Lo haré.
I will do so standing tall, not being dragged, never crawling, she said. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Rio de Janeiro.
Gas prices are low right now in the U.S., but global instability could change that. As NPR's Windsor Johnston reports, analysts are watching international flashpoints that can send oil prices surging overnight.
Right now, drivers are paying around $2.85 on average for a gallon of regular. Analysts expect prices to stay below $3 through the rest of the year. But petroleum expert Matt McLean says those forecasts can shift fast when global tensions rise.
Just last week, when the president said help is on the way, that sent oil prices up 4% over the course of a 24-hour period. Now today, prices are back down 4%, so we're back where we started. But the key of the matter is we are always monitoring those things.
McLean says conflicts involving oil-producing countries like Iran are being watched especially closely. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. Jacksonville-based Dun & Bradstreet will pay millions of dollars in fines and penalties to resolve allegations that it violated a Federal Trade Commission order. The Justice Department says the 2022 administrative order required the Business Data and Analytics Company to notify customers of automatic renewal prices, to not misrepresent its products, and to keep records proving compliance. In a complaint filed in federal court, the DOJ alleges Dun & Bradstreet sent out inaccurate pricing notices, left out or misrepresented facts about its products during sales calls, and failed to retain required recordings of sales calls to small businesses. Dun & Bradstreet is being ordered to pay a $2 million civil penalty and $2.7 million in customer refunds. The American Bar Association is no longer the primary or only accreditor of law schools in Florida after a state Supreme Court ruling yesterday. Danielle Pryor reports.
The Florida Supreme Court decision amended a rule that had formerly made the American Bar Association the sole accrediting agency for law schools. The decision comes a week after Governor Ron DeSantis floated making the Florida Supreme Court the primary accreditor of law schools in Florida, calling the American Bar Association biased and, quote, left of the left. Florida can start reaching out to alternate accreditors starting October 1st. In a statement, the American Bar Association says the ruling doesn't change anything, as it simply means, quote, the court acknowledges that other accreditors may also be recognized in the future. In Orlando, I'm Danielle Pryor.
Temperatures right now in the 30s in Jacksonville.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, envisioning a future where learning sparks opportunity and thriving belongs to everyone. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler. Welcome to First Coast Connect. It's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, state legislators look to fast-track mega developments, even as local residents are told to make way or move. JTA is raising fees for some disabled passengers, even as it cuts regular bus fares and makes its new downtown shuttle free. The mayor's office suspends its Hispanic outreach coordinator for Hispanic outreach related to ICE enforcement. Neighbors opposed to a persistent stench get class action status in a lawsuit against a local scent manufacturer. And a reporter makes her own headlines out over effusive praise at a Jaguars post-game presser. To talk about all that and more, I am joined by Mike Mendenhall, associate editor and City Hall reporter at Jacksonville Today. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Ann.
Jack Webb, attorney and former City Council President. Jack, good morning.
Good morning.
Christina Burgess, reporter at First Coast News. Welcome back, Christina.
Good morning, Ann.
And Ben Becker, anchor at Action News Jax. Good morning, Ben.
Happy chilly morning.
Happy chilly morning. Happy New Year as well.
You too.
It's good to have you guys all back on the program. So I want to start with this issue that kind of popped off a lot yesterday, having to do with ICE enforcement, also the mayor's Hispanic outreach coordinator sparking a backlash over comments that she made on social media about local ICE enforcement. It was nearly a 15-minute long Instagram video that she posted, and it urged the immigrant community to take precautions and if stopped, to comply. We'll talk about it in a second, but let's take a listen to part of that video.
They are out. They're out, and there's nothing we could do about it, guys. This is the world we're living in right now. So if you're in this situation, the best advice I could give you is to please just comply. Comply. As much as we don't want to. And I know many of us are going to be out recording these recordings. Please be safe. Be safe. Okay? Comply, have a plan in place with your lawyer, and have a power attorney in place.
So Yaya has actually been on this program many times. People will recognize her, but you can see that she's getting really emotional in that video, Jack.
Yeah.
She's been placed on administrative leave.
Yep.
And it's something that the mayor addressed a little bit yesterday about the reasons behind that. What are you hearing, and what are your thoughts about it, just from a civil rights perspective, since that's sort of your area of law?
I absolutely appreciate that.
Really, it's first of all, the mayor put her on administrative leave despite the calls for her head coming from other elected officials around the state. Okay, I think what the mayor's office is doing is dead on. Okay, let's respect her due process rights. Let's figure out what happened here. What I just heard sounds pretty reasonable and commendable. I think DeSantis made the comment that it was actionable or something like that. There's nothing wrong with what she said, but what's complicated here, what complicates the analysis is the fact she's a public employee. If she were a private employee, it would be protected. This is not a situation where the school board, you know about that particular case, you guys talked about it last week or this week, but this is a situation where she is, again, in a private context, this would be protected absolutely under the First Amendment. But again, under the legal analysis, the first question is whether this is a matter of public concern or is it related to her position. It's clearly related to her position. So she's not acting as a private citizen here. She's acting as an employee. And then there's a balancing act between her First Amendment rights and potential disruption to the city. I think that's what the Deegan administration is concerned about, is that if she, the very fact that Yahya distributed or made these comments from her into her private account, but during city time, implicates the city of the mayor's office. Let's face it, the administration's swimming in a big ocean of red sharks at this point, looking to pounce. Would these comments not be incendiary to the community, but incendiary to political officials who may disrupt her operations, her administration? Yes. So I think she's doing the right thing by suspending her, at least temporarily. I don't think this warrants termination, but quite honestly, I give her, on a personal level, I think what she said was reasonable and commendable.
Yeah. Christina Burgess, one of the questions that has emerged is, of course, as we said, she's the Hispanic outreach coordinator. There are a lot of people of Hispanic descent that are being stopped, whether or not they're U.S. citizens, both here in Jacksonville and elsewhere. And to some people, they've said, that is sort of her role, to talk to people in the community who are impacted as Hispanic members of this community for one reason or another. Yeah. But as Jack mentioned, the governor has come out basically saying, this was inappropriate. The attorney general labeled her comments illegal. Mm-hmm. And even our state rep here in Jacksonville, Kian, calling it lawless. Is it lawless to encourage someone to avoid arrest? Should these comments and notifying people about these stops, where do they fall?
Well, I know you just hit on it earlier when you were mentioning her role. And I think she probably knows her following and she knows her audience at that time. And I think we also saw how emotional she was. So I think it could have been where she was sitting in a moment where she was thinking about those people who she connects with on a day-to-day basis and those people who do look to her. And maybe she was even receiving calls and emails of people being like, hey, what do I do or what can we do? This week I spoke with an immigration attorney just here locally. And I know with this attorney's background, they were just speaking to kind of what Yahya was saying in her video, trying to help residents, trying to tell them or just keep them informed, keep them updated on this is the way to go about things in the right way, in the safe way, and kind of also go to people who can help you connect with those resources. And I think that people see Yahya as that resource to connect with.
Sure. And one of the things that she was offering, in terms of what she's been hearing and the need out there, she was saying, if you need groceries, if you're at home and you can't leave, reach out to me and I'll help provide those services. It was interesting to me, Mike, I want to ask you about the mayor's response yesterday, because we actually had her on the program on Tuesday and we asked her about ICE enforcement. Is she hearing about additional ICE enforcement? What are her concerns as a Democratic mayor, as we've seen Democratic mayors across the country have their cities targeted by significant, ICE enforcement? And we asked her about it. Let's listen to what she had to say and then I want to get your thoughts.
I think the sheriff is supportive of what of those ICE policies. I'm not saying of what just happened. I'm saying that they have been in partnership with ICE for many years.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good relationship there. So I don't see anything on the horizon that would indicate that they would target us, because I think they already have a pretty good partnership with JSO.
When she's saying what just happened, she's referencing Minneapolis, of course, but she was basically saying she hadn't heard about any major influx for ICE, and yet all of this news yesterday.
Yeah, and I was at the press conference yesterday at the mayor's office, and I actually followed up with a similar question. I asked her if she'd been briefed about, the current ICE enforcement levels, and if she has heard reports of an increase. And she still maintained pretty much that same line and said that, well, first of all, she had not been briefed because of the enforcement operation as a contract between JSO and ICE. But she also said too that she had not heard of increased levels of immigration enforcement, and she didn't really attribute the incidents that we've seen and that we've heard about to anything additional. I also we had the opportunity. The majority of the press conference was about Yahya and her suspension, and it was interesting. So Mayor Deegan, she did not come out against any of the content, and she, as a matter of fact, seemed to be supportive of the content that was in the video. But she said that the infraction really was violating the city's social media policy. It was that she did not get the message clearance from either the mayor or the communications staff before putting it out there. It was recorded on company time in her city office, which and put out on her personal social media feed. So that was part of the infraction. And Mayor Deegan, she also made an interesting comment to say that not only Yahya, but other people in her office have had issues in the past with speaking out of message or out of step with the administration, or not getting clearance to do that. So in a way, it was almost her kind of sending a message to the rest of her staff as well with such a politically charged issue.
Ben, one of the other things that happened yesterday was this news about a woman who punched a trooper who was part of a joint enforcement effort with ICE, and that woman was arrested, but that also became part of a kind of fat target on Jacksonville's back yesterday when it came to the attention of statewide officials.
Right, and we all saw some of that on social media yesterday, and very unusual to get a picture like that on official state accounts. You see her face. We ended up getting the mugshot and all that at the end of the day, and you get the comments from the state officials as well about it, which was, again, this is a different world, right? It's not like it used to be where you got kind of the communication from whether it's federal or state agencies it's kind of benign. They're almost convicting her before she's even gone to any kind of trial or first appearance or anything like that. But it was very interesting. We talked to the shop owner where that happened, and they talked about basically how people are scared, and there's a lot of fear there right now.
Yeah, it is something that we're hearing. I want to just read a little bit of a message that we got this morning from one of our listeners just before the piece aired, just saying, I want to be clear that for many people, the concern is not the idea that violent criminals should be removed from the country. Most Americans do not fundamentally disagree with that concept. What is deeply concerning is how enforcement is being carried out under the current administration, often in ways that feel inhumane, aggressive, and unaccountable. Went on to say ICE's presence in Jax also feels political in nature, particularly in a city led by a Democratic mayor and heightened partisan pressures. When the enforcement appears selective, aggressive, and shielded from consequence, it makes everyone less safe, everyone, undocumented immigrants, legal immigrants, and American citizens alike. Jack, do you, in an environment where there is administratively such support for ICE enforcement, and also concerns about a lack of due process, the advice from someone like Yahya is, comply. And certainly that is always advice that is best followed when it comes to being stopped by law enforcement. But there doesn't seem to be much recourse for people if they feel like they're being unfairly stopped. And we've seen some videos of that as well. People who are U.S. citizens who've been detained and handcuffed and taken even from their workplace in Minneapolis, for instance. Mm-hmm. So what do you as an attorney advise people if they're being stopped, if they feel that they are wrongfully stopped, or if they feel that they just wouldn't receive due process if they are stopped and taken away? We
cannot, in this current political environment, count on law enforcement to de-escalate. So whereas ordinarily, I'm like, assert your rights. But I would say, much like Yahya said, and much like lawyers all over the country and legal scholars are saying, comply, stay safe. Because you don't know how quickly this thing could spin out of control. What the comment that you just read really is striking, and it really goes to the comments that J.D. Vance was making yesterday, I think, with regards to the supremacy clause, absolute immunity, sovereign immunity, things of that nature. And it really, the Justice Department and the administration have really, the fact that they're bringing ICE in, they're subject to federal jurisdiction. All right, so sovereign immunity precludes state prosecution for criminal acts by federal officials. Okay, so you got that, and civil liability really doesn't exist anymore. You'd have to bring a claim under what's called a Bivens action, which has been kind of eviscerated over the last few years in a decision written by Clarence Thomas about 4 or 5 years ago. But so again, there's truly a lack of accountability here, and it's downright frightening. But de-escalate, or don't even de-escalate. Don't escalate.
Yeah.
Just do what Yaya said, comply, but have your passport in place and have a power of attorney all set, and make sure you've got a plan of communication.
We've got a call from Linda in Mandarin. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
Yes, I think, and I love the conversation is what it is nationally, which we are making ICE law enforcement. They're not. They're immigration people. So I'm a U.S. citizen. I go on a college campus that has an agreement with ICE. I'm being subject to, if they look at me and they think they want to stop me, and Jack just said, have your passport, have your papers. If I was born here and my ancestors here from the 1700s, is that not apartheid South Africa if I have to have my passport on me to prove to ICE that I was probably here before their ancestors? I just think the narrative needs to be, they have sovereign immunity for things that are done legally, but they are not law enforcement. They are supposed to be immigration. And Kavanaugh gave them the right to stop people when they're brown. That's why this is happening. And Yaya probably got the outreach from people in her community. As Hispanic coordinator, she was trying to make the people here feel comfortable that they had a resource in the mayor's office. And now the look is, that you're in the mayor's office, but don't step out of line because we're going to penalize people who are supporting brown people. That's just my feelings. It may not be facts, but that's my take. Thanks.
Linda, thanks. And of course, Yaya is the first ever Hispanic outreach coordinator for a mayor's office. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the week's headlines with our panel of journalists, and you are welcome to join our conversation. You can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can email First Coast Connect at wjct.org, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org and find other ways to connect with us. I do want to move on now to a story that you covered, both of you, Mike and Christina Burgess, a story that is, will be impacting hundreds, if not thousands of people in Jacksonville who depend on the city's paratransit service. Christina, JTA was initially considering canceling altogether the same-day ride service, and then they heard from the community.
They did. And a lot of times when you see change, it's when you hear from people that are going to be impacted by decisions. So once JTA leaders were hearing, hey, this is still a need, they decided to keep Connection Plus, go with this 6-month pilot program. But in it, there are some higher fares that people will now be seeing. I know before it was $6. I want to make sure I'm having it correct. $6 for the first 15 miles and then $2 per miles after. It's now going to cost them $10 for the first 8 miles and then $3.50 per mile after that. And so,
and I should say we struggled to do some math here at First Coast Connect, but basically the calculation is it turns a 15-mile ride from what used to be $6 to $34.50.
Yes, and the people who are having to pay that, they're going to be feeling the brunt of it. And we heard that. I was at City Council this week. We're doing public comment. There were multiple residents who went up before council members and kind of made these concerns known. I ended up speaking with them when they went outside in the atrium, and I just had each of them. They spoke with me and they said, hey, I work more. It takes me longer than 15 miles to get to my job. And so one woman said a week could cost her $300 in just 1 week. And so that will start to add up. And they were, we're grateful that JTA is still letting us have this and utilize this pilot program, but they're just like, this is going to cost us a lot. And their big thing was that we want to go to work. We want to still have, our rights and utilize this service that we've been utilizing. But now we're like, this is kind of hard on us. So.
And one of the people that you spoke to who spoke at that meeting was Sharon Gykes. She talked about just trying to absorb the impact of this new rate hike. Let's take a look and a listen.
I work full time. I live over 15 miles from my job. So it would cost me $320 a week to take transportation. $320 a week to go to work. So I ask you, is it better for me to sit home, be on benefits, and have you support me? Or would you like me to go to work, support myself? This is not a privilege. It is a right. We have a right to work. We have a right to have social activities. This affects our quality of life.
So Mike Mendenhall, that's a meeting that you also reported on. You know, obviously some emotional testimony for people who aren't able to watch the live stream. I mean, she's severely disabled. Someone is holding the microphone for her. She's in a wheelchair, and yet she is working full time and says she may not be able to continue because of this price increase.
Yeah, and people with disabilities is a group that's really benefited from the Connection Plus program, and could, you know, it would be very detrimental to them if it went away, and seeing the cost increase. It's supposed to be, the program itself is supposed to be kind of an affordable, option, separate from your traditional ride shares like Uber, Lyft. A lot of folks that experience these kind of issues, it's difficult for them to wait for a scheduled route bus. Sometimes the route bus do not take them to where they need to go. So,
and the paratransit shared bus system has notoriously had problems with on-time pickups.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. So recently the City Council Finance Committee got a quarterly audit report from JTA, and they are going to be returning to the City Council to ask to amend their budget, because they went several $1 million over budget. There were two programs that were the rationale. One was the Connection Plus. The other was the Navi autonomous vehicle program for some operational costs, and that program has been under a lot of scrutiny from City Council, as a lot of people think that it's a waste of money, on the City Council, and so that's an area too. They're like, why are we investing in this program when this other program seems to be successful?
Well, that's a question I have for you too, Ben. I mean, this is a agency that recently said we're $19 million over budget this past year. They're looking at making cutbacks to this paratransit service, and yet they're lowering their bus fares from $1.75 to $1, and they're making Navi free, this autonomous shuttle service on Bay Street downtown. What's the rationale there?
There is no rationale. So the Navi, or the Navi, or whatever you want to call it, according to the council auditor, went $7 million over budget. The Connection Plus, my understanding, it cost JTA $6.5 million to run it. So you start doing math, and you have the $7 million here and the $6.5 here. So in effect, they're pouring $7 million plus into an autonomous vehicle that's not even autonomous, at the expense of elderly and disabled people who can't get to work now. So where does that make sense, right?
Yeah.
Where does that make sense? And this has been discussed over and over again about these Navi vans. They're not autonomous. They're being driven by drivers right now. We've had crashes with them, even with the driver.
Ridership is very low.
Ridership is almost non-existent. I know City Council hates them. I'm not sure anybody wants them. I don't know about you guys. I've never spoken to anybody that says I want an autonomous vehicle to take me down the road on Bay Street.
Well, I should say we have an employee here that has successfully been riding the Navi, enjoys it.
Great.
Well, that's one.
We got one. All right. So there's one. The only people that I've heard that want this program is Nat Ford and Mayor Deegan.
Nat Ford, the head of JTA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beyond them, I don't know anybody that said, yes, we must have autonomous vehicles in downtown Jacksonville.
Well, you look at cities that have implemented autonomous vehicles, like in California, that actually are autonomous. They don't have a driver. They're cabs that are working around the city. They're certainly flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of wonder, Jack, is it necessary for a agency to take that on when there are presumably private companies that to some extent are already doing that?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think it goes to, well, I'm watching the video here, and that young woman was speaking to the Jacksonville City Council. Jacksonville City Council doesn't make these decisions. Jacksonville City Council has one liaison who is a non-voting member of the JTA board, all right? So what do we have here? We've got an oversight problem, right? Well, that begs the question, why is the JTA board structured the way it is? Because the governor's got 4 appointees, the mayor has 3, and what? And the FDOT regional secretary serves ex officio on the board. Okay, but why? Again, it goes back to like the 50s because the JTA was originally the Jacksonville Expressway Authority. It was a road building operation in conjunction with the Florida Department of Transportation. Okay, in the 70s, when the private bus lines went bankrupt, JEA took them over and said, all right, we're going to be the Jacksonville Transportation Authority. All right, now JTA doesn't build roads anymore. So, but yet they're running transit within the city of Jacksonville. Why? I mean, it seems to me that you say Nat Ford wants this thing. Well, JTA independent board also wanted the Skyway many years ago. Okay, that didn't work out so well. So you're still trying to fix that by doubling down on the Navy stuff. All right, I'm not really sure if the Deegan administration was wholly supportive of the Navy. She is now, because we got nowhere to go. Right, we got to recover sunk costs here as best we can. But once again, here's my suggestion: if anybody on the city council wants to have some fun, get a supporter in the legislature, introduce a J bill to restructure the JTA board, see where that goes.
And remember, the Navy also ties to the Skyway because they want to be able to have those vehicles come off the Skyway onto Bay Street.
Yeah.
And I think the alternative was to tear down the Skyway, but I believe you'd have to pay the government back like $90 or $100 million.
So
Right.
they want these vehicles they want to adapt them to the existing Skyway
Right.
with ramps and then have them run on the Skyway.
Exactly. And the alternative is to tear down the Skyway and then pay back the federal government. And they figure, okay, it's better to spend $300 or $400 million to try to retrofit it than the $100 million to give it back. You do the math. What's better?
We've got a call from Pablo in Southside. Good morning, Pablo. Go ahead.
I think everything he's saying is absolutely right about how they're handling the Navi. I mean, it's just a total disaster. It doesn't connect very well to the Skyway. It doesn't run on game days. I know they just set out a statement that it'll be ready for the next season, but think about that for the Jags and all the events that are held at the stadium. That's going to be closed for the next 2 seasons. So they're effectively buying themselves another 2 years to fix a system that doesn't work. Like he said, has the drivers in the vans, doesn't run very well, doesn't run when we need it, has very low ridership that's propped up by the JTA. I mean, why are they not exploring real transit alternatives? Sure, Connection Plus, and I think Connection Plus has its place in the system, but they need to be improving the buses. They need to be investing in actual Skyway, repair and replacement and expansion, but also light rail. Where'd the light rail system, when they pushed that out last year, that's just disappeared. So, yeah, the JTA, the city needs to be taking a deeper look into the JTA.
All right. Thanks, Pablo, for your comments. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Mike Mendenhall, Jack Webb, Christina Burgess, and Ben Becker about the week's headlines. And you can join the conversation at 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org. Ben Becker.
And not to beat a dead horse, and I'm not taking a position on this, but the Navy also isn't street legal. Also, that there's not a dedicated lane for it, and currently, right now, to be able to run it, an autonomous vehicle down Bay Street, they hope to do, would not be legal.
That's why they have the driver in part.
Well, they don't have the technology yet to be able to do it, but they still have to get approval to eventually be able to have autonomous vehicles.
When they have the
fully
technology.
autonomous vehicle to run down Bay Street.
All right. I want to move on now to some development disputes both here and in Tallahassee. Here in Jacksonville, a city council member kind of ran into the crosshairs of the community on the north side after some controversial comments he made at a land use and zoning meeting January 6th. He was responding to objections from residents up there about a high-density community that was looking for a zoning change to come in. Ben, you covered this. I want to listen to his comment, and then we can talk about it.
Guys, Jacksonville is growing. There's going to be density happening in Jacksonville. You guys have a lot of area, a lot of square footage in your piece of town. On my side, in E-Town, there's a lot of development happening too. I can't tell the developers. I mean, I can't, but it's not going to be fair for me to tell them, hey, only 100, RLD 100, because I don't want any density. So the fact is, if people don't want density, go somewhere else. It's coming to Jacksonville, so we have to be able to conform to that.
So the city council member representing those Northside residents didn't take kindly to that, Ben.
No, so that was Raul Arias speaking. He was directing that to Mike Gay, who represents District 2, and also to the northeast side or north side, as you will. So just imagine this. You live in northeast Jacksonville. You're a second-generation Jacksonville resident, a third-generation Jacksonville resident, a fourth-generation Jacksonville resident, and you're being lectured to by a guy who came here from Miami 10 or 15 years ago to tell you, if you don't like development coming to your area, move out. How do you think that went over? Mike Gay lost his mind. Okay, the people on their Facebook pages went crazy.
Mike Gay is the city council member.
Yes,
for that
right.
district.
Like, and their reaction was, this is what I heard, it's what Mike Gay heard, was, how dare you speak to us in that manner? How dare you tell us that we have to leave because you don't want development where you are? So after this, about a week later, Raul Arias apologized. And, you know, we don't see public apologies too often on the dais at city council, but that's what happened.
Well, let's take a listen to his apology.
Words matter, and I said something I shouldn't have said last week in LUZ committee, so I want to apologize not only to you, Mr. Gay, but also to the community in general. What I said really affected a lot of people that were here, and I just want to let you guys know that I misspoke. My frustrations were clearly, we need more houses in Jacksonville, and a lot of people are building houses in the south side and all different parts of town, and we need more development.
So he apologized, Jack, but big picture, you know, he said, Raul Arias said, look, I can't say no to a developer. And in fact, this rezoning moved forward 6-0. So, the people on the council aren't saying no to this developer. It is true that developers in this area typically get what they want.
Well, so much for elected representation, all right? We're just going to, the reality is political, the reality is that I got to default to the whims and the demands of the developers? Whoa, okay, all right. That's problematic in and of itself. But number two point, Warren Alvarez, who is a long-term representative from that area, who's now deceased, he's rolling over in his grave. Number three, this is what blows me away in many respects, is what's happened to the collegiality on the council. It used to be the practice that if the district rep opposed a development, that the rest of the council would not even engage.
They would defer to that council member.
They would defer to that council member. And you know, so I feel for Raul here to a certain extent, because I mean, I lost my head, I lost my whatever on an LUC meeting one day and said some things I probably shouldn't have said, but that's because I was trying to protect my community. I was going after the developer, and that didn't sit too well with the developer. But you know, perhaps that's only why I only served one term. But
lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
You know, Mike Mendenhall, I want to ask you, because in terms of development power, we're also seeing pressures at the state level. There is a bill that's called this Blue Ribbon Bill that is moving forward. We'll make some changes, but big picture, it says if you're a massive mega developer and you agree to put aside a chunk of your land into conservation, essentially the local government and the people who live there have zero say. It would be an automatic expedited approval for this massive development, as long as there was, some of these requirements were met, including being near sort of some transit hub of some kind, whether it's rail or highways, and then again, putting this land into conservation. What does a bill like that portend for people who are concerned about the pace or the kind of development that's happening?
Well, for one thing, too, it also reinforces the fact of the belief of a lot of people that think that the Tallahassee is quickly eroding home rule in the state, taking the power and the authority away from the local governments to make these kind of decisions. In terms of the development itself, I mean, there are differing opinions all over the country, nationwide, on what to do about the affordability of housing, the housing crisis. And trying to bring more units, more homes to fast growing areas, and that includes a state like Florida. So this bill is incredibly aggressive at it, and it's going to make a lot of folks upset. Kind of going back to what Councilmember Arias said, there's a lot of people out there that think that density is the answer. Building more units in a small area, that's the answer. But the residents that live in these places, a lot of them move there because it's rural, because it has wetlands and nature like that. That's why they move there. It drastically changes the character of their area when you see large scale suburban development coming in. And when you set aside area for conservation, a lot of environmentalists and will tell you that what really develops an ecosystem and creates an ecosystem is consistent a conservation land. You need a large area. If you break it up with development, it's really not going to impact the ecosystem, or it's not going to positively affect the ecosystem. It's really going to damage it.
Christina, you obviously cover in City Hall a lot of issues where people are speaking against a community. This particular area, which is, home to Cedar Branch Road, Cedar Bay Road, Main Street North, there's a lot of available land. And yet it's also one of those areas that the city has itself designated as, at risk of flooding. There's a lot of wetlands there. It's an area that the city's own kind of resiliency and growth experts say, that's maybe not the most resilient area to build in. Those roads are going to be underwater in a lot of cases. You can build a community there, but if people can't get to and from it, it's not going to be a great place to live.
Yeah, and I think that's, what residents are kind of trying to make known and trying to speak. And I think, like you were saying earlier, if you're a second generation, fourth generation, your area, your community, you kind of know what you're talking about and your stuff. And I think a lot of times, time and time again, we hear from residents, not even just in this community, many communities, many neighborhoods that are like, hey, we don't need something here for XYZ because we're the ones that are living it. We're the ones that are seeing it. And I think that when you come to a meeting like that and you're speaking to officials, you're hoping that they lend you an ear because you are the ones that are in this lived experience.
All right. I want to move on to another topic that got quite a bit of attention this past week since the Jaguars game. Has to do with a local reporter. She was speaking to Coach Liam Cohen after their devastating loss and didn't really have a question. Let's take a look and a listen to what she had to say.
I just want to tell you, congratulations on your success, young man.
Thank you.
You hold your head up, all right? You guys have had a most magnificent season.
Thank
you. And you did a great job out there today.
Appreciate
so you just hold your head up, okay?
Thank
and
you,
ladies
ma'am.
and gentlemen, Duval, you the one, all
Thank
right?
you, ma'am.
keep it going. We got another season, okay?
I appreciate
Take
it.
care and much continued success to you and the entire team.
Thank you, ma'am.
And wow, what a backlash. That actually dominated the headlines. The Jaguars' loss was like,
yeah.
after the jump, as you'd say in the newspaper business. It did not really command attention. So this was covered by the New York Times. This was covered by, the Today Show. She was interviewed widely. First Coast News interviewed her. A couple of thoughts I want to get you guys thinking. I mean, obviously there was criticism from the world of journalists saying this wasn't journalistically sound. She shouldn't be just effusively praising the coach. That wasn't, and then there were a lot of people defending her and a lot of backlash to the media from people saying, why can't you just be nice? This person had nice things to say. And it sort of turned into a backlash against journalists who are critical of her non-question.
Yeah, I think we've all covered press conferences. I'm not a sports reporter, but you've been in the room where, you do want to ask those hard-hitting questions. And I think sometimes we get that tunnel vision, but I think we saw Lynn, she was sitting in a seat of, being a human and being a person and seeing another person. And I know she was saying how she kind of read the room and, yeah, we lost the game. So it's going to be somber. People are going to be asking him all of these questions. And she decided to go in a lane of her own. And I think since this is going viral, we've heard her speak locally and nationally about, the lane that she has been in for years. And, when I was kind of seeing and hearing everything that she was saying, she was kind of saying, I'm true to this, not new to this. Like, I've been in the game for decades before I've even been, I'm still a young baby journalist. And so she was just saying, you might have seen me in this viral moment in this room, but I've also been in other rooms. And I think we saw members of the media kind of speaking to wanting to have her credentials taken. And it was just a wide range of things. And I think other people kind of saw it as this is a nice highlighting moment. Some people said this is like my internet auntie, my internet grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And they even felt like that what she was saying, I know she said it to Coach Cohen, but a lot of them felt like it resonated with them at home.
Ben, I'm curious what you have to say because, there are people that think, well, this is a nice moment. Duval grandma, she's called. But people in the world of journalism often take a negative view of something like that. And, sports reporting sometimes itself is accused of this sort of hagiography of sports figures and not maybe being as probing or as journalistically sound as they might be in that field. So what's your take on the appropriateness of that comment?
Well, it's funny because everyone assumed I'd be negative about it.
Yes.
I would hate it. I'd love it. I thought it was fantastic, right? Look, I covered sports for more than 10 years, okay? I've been in these news conferences. They ask the coaches stuff. It's always the same coach speak that you get back. you never really get anything of value out of these news conferences that blows you away. As soon as I heard this, I turned to Tanika on the set and I said, this is going viral.
Really?
And sure as heck it did. I just knew it. It was a story. You could see it. It was a feel-good moment. You got to remember, too, that she's representing a newspaper that's a community newspaper. That's her readership. She's not representing Action News or Washington Post or whoever.
Well, what if it had been one of your reporters? What would have happened to one of your reporters?
That's different, right?
But I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a different expectation, right? If it's us, well, we have different viewers, right? And they have a certain expectation of what we deliver.
Would that reporter have gotten in trouble?
I would imagine that would not have gone over so well.
Yeah.
But she has different readers that have a different expectation. They're not necessarily looking for the critical view. They want more of a positive outlook on it. And I thought it was fine. It was great. And I think it's been proven right because it blew up everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. To your point, no one talked about the game. They talked about her question. And it was a nice moment.
We've got a call from Michael on the north side. Just briefly, Michael, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know that's rare in Donald Trump's America to display compassion and sympathy and empathy, but anybody who watched that press conference could see that the coach was visibly dejected. He literally had his head down prior to her comment. So she was responding to how he was looking. She was responding to his visible mood, his demeanor, his mannerisms. He was giving all his answers with his head down. That's why she said, hold your head up, be proud. She was trying to encourage him. And again, we don't see much of that, but we need more of it.
Michael, thank you. We've got a call from Sally in Springfield. Good morning, Sally. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I just wanted to point out mostly the people complaining were the other reporters in the room. There was like 7 seconds of nobody asking questions before she asked the question. And lastly, I haven't heard any fans complaining. So she really basically lifted up not just the coach and the team, but the whole community and the fans.
Sally, thank you. Appreciate those comments. Just before we wrap, I want to get to a story that is important, worth touching on. Mike, this is Murray Hill residents achieving class action status in their long-running lawsuit over the stench in Murray Hill. They say that IFF, International Fragrances and Flavors and Fragrances on the Westside, a chemical manufacturer, is responsible.
Yeah, and that this group of people has been the residents of Murray Hill have been fighting this for a very long time. I believe this is the second lawsuit, if I'm not mistaken, that's happened.
Yeah, they
on
filed
this
in federal
issue.
court, and I think it had to move to state court. So
yeah, and so I mean, Jacksonville has a long history of negative odors. It's pretty widely known. Back in I believe it was the 70s that the paper mills
and
in
80s,
Jacksonville and 80s. 90s. The paper mills were provided quite a stench in the city, and it took a lot of action, legally and through the city to get those to stop. So, I mean, I think that, the folks that are filing this lawsuit, they're really looking for people to listen and to believe them.
Jack, as he noted, I mean, the city has a reputation. This plant also has a reputation. They insist the smell is not originating from them. They say they've got very strict procedures in place to keep emissions that smell from escaping. And yet anybody that lives in that area near that plant, and now more and more because Murray Hill is growing so quickly, people in Murray Hill, they say they can't go outside for runs. They can't go outside for barbecues. It is a horrific smell.
Well, my office is in Riverside, and we get it over there, and it's seasonal. It's really interesting. It is pretty pungent, and I kudos. Well, my understanding as well is that the analysis that's been done thus far, the evidence that's been collected, has pretty much pointed the finger.
They would say otherwise.
They would say otherwise, and I had my own theories as to where it was coming from. But apparently, they've pled enough to survive motions to dismiss, and they got the class certified, under Judge Dees.
And that's significant.
It's very significant. They've been fighting an uphill battle on this thing. Let's face it. This organization has got some clout in the community as far as First Coast Manufacturers Association and other members in,
which is a lobbying group.
A lobbying group. So they're pretty powerful. So for the Murray Hill group to get this boulder pushed as far up the hill as the mountain as they have is kudos to them. We'll see where it goes.
Christina, this is a story First Coast News has covered for many, many years. Just briefly, I know that's something you guys are still staying on top of. Is this a significant development?
It definitely is. I know I got here in 2024, but reporters that even came before me, they had been covering it. And so it has been a big deal. And so I know this is a big move for this community, and we're going to be keeping our eyes on the direction that it goes.
Ben, your thoughts just briefly.
Maybe we need another stink study. The city did one.
Yeah.
Right. They had the stink meters
Yeah.
up everywhere. It was kind of inconclusive.
Well, it basically said we now know what direction the wind is blowing.
It didn't really tell us much.
They didn't really come with any big conclusion.
And I think they concluded that a lot of the smell was coming off a tributary or one of the fish weir or whatever.
Yeah.
Down in that area. So I don't know.
Well, it's a big issue. We will continue to cover it. Mike Mendenhall, Christina Burgess, Ben Becker, Jack Webb. Thanks so much for being here. Great talking to you all.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Up next, how a local potter's work ended up hanging on a vice president's Christmas tree.
Scenic Jacksonville presents the Great Cities Symposium on February 5th. Victor Dover, city builder and town planner, shares how he has transformed cities, streets, and neighborhoods through urban design across the U.S. Tickets available at scenicjacksonville.org. Florida Theater presents An Evening with Itzhak Perlman. This multimedia program interweaves storytelling alongside personal photos, documentary clips, and performances by the violinist and his pianist. Monday, January 26th at 8 p.m. Tickets and information available at floridatheater.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com. The Gamble Rogers Festival and St. John's Cultural Council present an evening of songwriting and musicianship by Robert Bolin and Will Mehring. Live from the Waterworks, January 17th in St. Augustine. Tickets available at gamblerogersfest.org. Congaree & Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com.
How a personal misdiagnosis led an emergency room physician to help others navigate the healthcare system. On the next, What's Health Got to Do with It?
On the next Friday News Roundup, what we know about aggressive ICE tactics on the ground in Minneapolis.
One of the agents pulled out his firearm and aimed it at me from point-blank range while I had my hands open and out to my sides.
Plus, President Trump goes after Fed Chair Powell, the FBI raids a Washington Post reporter's home, and Denmark and Greenland visit the White House. We round up the news next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, for most of his life, Charlie Moses Brown toiled in relative obscurity as an accountant. But once he turned his full focus to art, his work became nationally and even internationally known. Here to tell us about it is Brittany Cohill, Executive Director of the Mandarin Museum and Historical Society. Brittany, welcome back.
Thank you, Anne.
Good to see you. So Charlie Brown.
Yes.
He was born in Mayport, but he moved to Mandarin as a very young child and basically spent his life there until his death in 1987. Tell us a little bit about just this unusual career trajectory of his.
Yeah, so he was not an artist always. He worked with numbers. He worked for a local fruit company as an accountant. And, he made a massive career shift. And this was, I think he was 58 years old and decided to go full time as a potter.
Quite a change.
With the encouragement of his friends who were also artists, Memphis Wood, who is an artist that's near and dear to us in our Mandarin history as well. And he was inspired by some courses that he was taking that Memphis had encouraged him to take. And he felt like he wanted to do something meaningful with his life. And so this was part of the American studio crafts movement post-World War II, and really a reaction to mass production, mechanization, And this reaction that emphasized self-expression, working with your hands, a connection to the earth. And so Charlie was part of that. And he was successful. Memphis didn't have much confidence. She said, I think once Tim Gilmore, local author, had included this in a recent article that Memphis said to him, "You're making a mistake. You won't make enough money to even buy your whiskey each week."
Well, we're looking at, for people watching our live stream, pictures of Charlie at work in his studio. And his style was really different for a few reasons. One was this, he didn't use a potter's wheel, and he really, tried to avoid that clean look. He really liked to do stuff by hand. And he also had a specific style of firing his work. Can you tell us just a little bit about his approach?
Right. So he worked mostly in reiku pottery, which is a Japanese method that originated in the 16th century, actually. And it produces a really delicate piece that you have to really handle with care. And you fire it at a very high temperature in a small kiln. And then when the kiln is opened, you bring it out. And while it's still very hot, you put it in some sort of combustible material. Charlie used sawdust. And I think the public might be seeing photographs of him at work, pouring it and putting it into this sawdust. And so sometimes it could be a dicey procedure. His first shop did burn to the ground.
Oh, wow.
A radical ember just kind of flew out and burned the whole place down.
What is the effect that gives the pottery when it's kind of fired and then put into something that itself catches fire?
Well, it really produces some unique forms in the glaze. And, the potter themselves, they really don't know exactly what the outcome will be. And I think that's part of the fun and part of the production process.
And I mentioned before the break that some of his work, he did pots, but he also did jewelry. He did other pieces. Mm-hmm. And he also did Christmas ornaments, one of which ended up in the vice president's house.
Yes. So Walter Mondale and Mrs. Mondale in the late 70s, early 80s, there was this focus on American crafts artists. And so he had several of his ornaments sent to D.C. and were on the vice president and second lady's Christmas trees.
He also was known for harvesting by hand his own clay. He would go down to Green Cove Springs and sort of dig it out of the riverbanks there and use that. It was all part of his tactile artistic experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And there's so many wonderful quotes from Charlie about his love for just having his fingers in the clay. And I think it's so much more than that, not just clay in general, but the clay that's part of the land that he feels so connected to.
There's a great quote from him that you all have in your display where he says, "My greatest wish is that I will leave behind me a few statements in clay that have a timeless and precious quality which makes for endurance," which I think is, great, just speaking of his desire to have a legacy. The museum is lucky to have an exhibit with his pieces in it. It's called When the Kiln is Opened, The Art of Charlie Moses Brown. How long is this on display?
Till March 21st of this year.
Okay.
Yes.
And if we have a link on our website, but if people want to get more information about the exhibit, where should they go?
Mandarinmuseum.org. They can find information there, and we're open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 to 4, free admission.
Excellent. Well, Brittany, thanks so much for coming on and telling us about Charlie Moses Brown. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can find all of our programs, past and current, at firstcoastconnect.org. And while you're there, you can sign up for our new daily newsletter, which gives you show information, behind-the-scenes information, and also a chance to submit questions to our guests in advance. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett. Our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Our show is directed by Brady Corum, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Don't forget to listen to WJCT's What's Health Got to Do with It, Saturday at 4, when Dr. Joe Servin discusses the uncomfortable realities of living with gastrointestinal grief. Join us Monday when we discuss the civil rights implications of recent ICE crackdowns for U.S. citizens and non-citizens alike. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
AEG presents The Beach Boys, saluting 60 years of pet sounds with 2 shows at the Ponte Vedra Concert Hall, Monday, January 26th at 5 and 8:30 p.m. Tickets and information available at axs.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.